Let's get to a job opening that now exists with the Giants. Why do the Giants make this move, Albert?
A few things. So I think, I think that the overarching one would be like the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing over and over again. I like there were some facts that I didn't realize until I started talking to some people there. This is the third straight year they've started the season 2-8. They haven't won consecutive games in almost 2 years now, which is wild to think about. And then, like there's the way this season went, and like really the two big wins that they had. The first one, all the way back in September, they win with Jaxson Dart going in there, beating a really good Chargers team, right? So like, okay, like we're sort of like we're going now, and now we got some chance to build some momentum. And then they fall off the next week against the Saints, and that's not a good Saints team. And then they beat the Eagles, and everybody remembers what that looked like post game with those guys ripping their shirts off and everything else. And then 10 days later, they blow the lead in Denver. And then that blown lead in Denver, which was, an 18-point lead going into the fourth quarter, is followed by this past Sunday. You blow a 10-point lead with 6 minutes left. It's just these patterns and these things happening over and over again. And so I think that's sort of what drove, John Mara and the owners there to the point where it's like, okay, like this is not going to get better. And then I think to some degree you also want to get a look at Mike Kafka, who, I like is very well respected. He's got the Andy Reid seal of approval. I'd say at the end for Mike Kafka in Kansas City, like Reid really wanted to see him as their offensive coordinator, and the timing didn't work out with Eric Bieniemy. So he's got that, and he's also, as he's interviewed for some of these jobs, done really well in his interviews. So I think part of it is like let's see what we've got on staff with Mike Kafka, and now we get a 2 month head start where we can kind of evaluate our organization out in the open, and we don't need to be hiding the research we're doing from anyone.
So the Dart injury now bringing about Jameis Winston, which is Mike Kafka's first move that's different.
Yep.
And the two things that one I just alluded to, Dart getting hurt might have had something to do with forcing a hand by ownership, along with the fact that there were no changes made to the defensive staff when the defense was the one that was constantly blowing these fourth quarter leads with one of the best front four that you can think of in the NFL. Certainly the best front four of a two-win team in the NFL. And I understand the Cleveland Browns might raise their hands and say, don't forget about us, even though this is not a contest anybody wants to be in. What about those two pieces to the equation here, Albert?
Yeah, so I think like going to Jameis Winston, like whether he intends to do this or not, it does have like a little bit of a new sheriff in town feel to it, where and maybe it's acknowledging something they're seeing in practice. That part I don't know. But I do think part of the deal in signing Russell Wilson, and this isn't all Russ's fault, but part of the deal in signing Russell Wilson was you had to tiptoe around him a little bit, Like I felt like when they signed Jameis Winston, it was like, okay, like this guy should be given a chance to compete. Like at this point, I don't think like Russell Wilson deserves like a free pass to the starting job. Yet they declared him starter pretty early and they gave him all the starter reps. And I think like there's been this feeling even after benching him and going to Jaxson Dart, like we can't embarrass Russ. We can't show Russ up. Like, and so you're tiptoeing around him that way. And I just feel like this has a way of just kind of putting an end to all of that, right? Like where it's, look, like we're going to make decisions based on merit from here on out. This is on Mike Kafka to make these decisions, and he's got the keys, and now we'll see where he can take it, right? That effectively becomes the message that this sends to the locker room, and we'll see what the response is from the locker room. And then, defensively, I would say they are disappointed based on where they are. I think part of it is like getting the best seasons out of individual guys. And that does not mean they haven't gotten great seasons out of some guys. Like I would say like Brian Burns, like despite the team's record, is like a guy like that is in the running for defensive player of the year. He's played that well. But Dexter Lawrence isn't close to where he was a year ago. So how, do you look at those things? I think there's an acknowledgement that with some of the more talented guys on the defensive side of the ball, some of what's gone on the last few years has started to wear on them a little bit. And so the hope here would be that they can get a spark. And again, like I know you're talking like specifically to the defensive coordinator, to Shane Bowen, but I do know Shane's still pretty well respected in that building. And I don't think very many people there would tell you he's the problem.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.